Hello, everyone. This is the Free American Press with your host, Alexander. Today, we are having Keith Neumeyer. He's the CEO at First Majestic Silver on the show. Hello, Keith. Thank you for being on the show.
Yeah, Alex, nice meeting you for the first time.
Likewise. So what first got you interested in mining precious metals?
Well, that goes back a long, long ways. I've been in the mining business for, 35 years. I started in the banks as a trader, on the floor of the stock exchange. And from there, I evolved into running, mining companies, or at least executive positions, and then later started running them. But, I think I've always had a passion for rocks and then nature, and then always had a passion, to make money. So I think mining, gives a lot to the communities, which I also like, creating jobs, which mining does. And I create a lot of jobs in my career, and that's the kind of thing I like to do. So adding value and I just think running mining companies, is quite exciting. A good mine can change communities for decades, into the future, and educate kids. And we bring, I've been into many small towns throughout the world. And Africa was my first company. It was a copper company I put together back in '92, and it became, it's still today one of the largest copper companies in the world. And I put this First Majestic together in 2002. So I'm used to driving through these small communities before we showed up with our investment. And you get into a community with only a couple hundred people there, and 5 years later, there's a bustling 3,000-4,000 person community with stores and schools, and paved roads and electrical infrastructure, water infrastructure, internet availability, and so on and so forth. And that's what mining does. And there's not too many other industries around the planet that can really bring that kind of wealth to these very impoverished parts of the world. And I just love doing it. I just think we, as a mining industry, we get we don't get the credit, I think, for many of the great things that we do.
Yeah, that sounds really good that you're helping all these people, giving them jobs and doing all that. That's really cool. So what does it take to run a profitable silver mine, as most of them go bust?
Well, the mining sector is very cyclical. So often it comes down to grade, which means the amount of silver that's in a ton of rock. Most mines are underground mines. Open pit mines, we don't have any open pit mines, but they're the big copper mines, the big zinc mines, these are generally speaking open pit mines where you can afford slightly lower grades because you're doing huge bulk mining methods, so your cost per ton for mining is generally quite lower. But when you're 300, 400, 500 meters under the surface of the earth, in 4-meter tunnels, it's expensive. And you're moving a lot of rock to find that silver or find that gold, or whatever the case may be, and it all comes down to grade. And generally speaking, if you have a mine that's 200 or 300 grams silver, which is about 7 or 8 or up to 10 ounces of silver in a ton of rock, at current metal prices at 10 ounces, you're talking about $250 rock per ton. And it's going to cost you maybe $100 to process it, get it out of the planet, get it out of the earth, 500 meters down, bring it to surface, process it in the mill, and then with that doré bars that you produce, get those to the refineries, and then or if you produce a concentrate, you can send it to the smelters. But in our case, First Majestic, we produce all doré bars. And these doré bars then get refined into 999, 1,000-ounce commercial bars, which then gets sent into the banks, and then of course gets consumed in industry. So if in that case, when you've got a $250 rock and your cost is $100, your margins are pretty good. But all of a sudden, if that grade is 100 grams per ton, it's 3 ounces, that's $75. If it's 30 grams, that's only 1 ounce, that's $25. You're going to lose money mining low grade rock like that, or we call it ore. But it's very cyclical industry. So you have to have decent mines that can withstand the cycles of lower metal prices, and that's the trick in M&A activity. So when you're buying mines or developing mines, you always have to focus on grade.
Oh, that definitely makes sense. So where are your most productive mines located?
Well, all our mines are in Mexico. So we have going back to 2017, we actually had 7 mines operating. Today we have 3 mines operating. So going back to my classic case I just used regarding grades, the mines that we ended up shutting down, they're small mines that we've had in our portfolio since the early days of me putting First Majestic together, and we were producing concentrates. So these are, without getting too complicated, a concentrate is just a pile of black powder, and it's made up of, several kinds of metals, including lead and zinc and silver and gold, of course, but, selenium and arsenic and cadmium and, every single metal that's in that rock that Mother Nature has put there, we extract out in the form of a concentrate. The concentrate business is a very expensive business. You're at the mercy of the smelters. So we ended up, due to the low metal prices, so silver was down at $14 an ounce, and those mines were just simply not making money. So we ended up shutting down 4 mines. So today we have 3 mines operating, and they're all extremely profitable at the current metal prices, and even they could withstand even lower metal prices, which I'm hoping we don't see, of course. But the 3 mines that are currently in our portfolio, are great mines, and they can withstand lower metal prices if they ever did occur.
So do you refine your own silver?
Well, when we're producing Dory bars, it's not quite to the refined state. It's not a commercial bar. We send our Dory bars. So a Dory bar, people that are listening to this interview might want to just Google Dory bars and see what a Dory bar looks like. But, they're generally about 40, 50 pound blocks of silver, that are in the 93 to 97% purity range. And then you've got a little bit of gold in there, and you've got some other, metals. You might have some lead in there, or you might have some copper or whatever, mixed in that bar. And then these bars get sent into primarily the United States. We use a couple of refineries in the US. We also use a refinery in Mexico as well. So we pay them a fee on a per ounce basis to refine these bars, these Dory bars, into commercial 999, pure silver, bars.
Okay, so have you thought of making your own commercial bars, say refining it yourself?
We have several times. The technology, it's a very specialized industry, and it wouldn't be that suitable to do that on site at the mines, because it's just too specialized. You really have to. It's a totally different side of the business. I would love to have a refinery in our portfolio. Maybe one day we will, but currently we don't.
Okay. So is your company going to start paying dividends?
Yeah, well, many people that are listening to this probably know the answer to that if they follow the company. Back in December, we put a news release out for our inaugural first ever dividend, and that is going to be, it started ticking away on January 1st, 2021. It'll be paid on a quarterly basis based on 1% of revenue. So it's kind of neat because as our revenues increase as a result of increased metal prices, that have a direct benefit to our investors. It's not profit related, it's revenue related, which is a little bit different than most dividends. And it's only 1%, so it's not a huge number, but we hope to see that increase. It's our first ever. I put the company together. We're in our 19th year now, and I would love to start a dividend earlier, but we've been in a bear market for quite some time, and things are just turning around now. So I think our cash flows are pretty substantial. Our profits are pretty substantial. So we're in a pretty good financial position to pay out a dividend, which we're happy to do. But I would love to see that dividend increase to 2, 3, 4, 5% of revenue. maybe over time we can increase it. We'll see.
Yeah, definitely. That's cool that you're paying dividends. So, what do you think about a global tax? We saw Yellen talking about this recently. What are your thoughts on that?
Global tax on what?
It's a global income tax. She was just talking about it for the whole world, for every country.
Yeah, geez, I haven't heard of that. That's we're getting pretty socialist here, and you know, the governments are uh, they're going a little bit crazy with this whole new phenomenon that's occurring around the world. You know, they keep spending our money, then they come back, then they come to us and ask for more money. It's almost like theft in a way, right? Um, you know, I don't know whoever gave the politicians permission to spend the kind of money they're spending now. I know if I was you know, in the government, I would, you know, put a stop to it pretty quick, and go back to a real system of balanced budgets and so on. But the current state of affairs, you know, these governments just seem to think they could just print endless amounts of money without any repercussions, and you know, for them to, you know, start coming to the, you know, populace for handouts, you know, is completely nonsensical, because it almost, you know, it's almost, you know, giving them permission in a way to even spend more money, and you
Yeah,
know, it's
yeah,
ridiculous.
I definitely agree with you. So, do you think that's just a way to bully, smaller countries like the Cayman Islands and others to get them to start having an income tax?
You know, this is brand new. I just heard it just now, Alex. So I actually haven't seen that headline. I'd have to dig into it a little bit more. But look, of course, low tax jurisdictions around the world are looked at poorly from you know, the G7. You know, they don't like these countries trying to steal what they would perceive as income from them or taxes from them. You know, we have a similar situation going on with the Mexican government, where, you know, we have a stream in place at one of the mines, and you know, the Mexican government, you know, feels that they should be getting, you know, more money for the export of the metal. Yet, you know, there's streams in place to price that metal in other jurisdictions outside of Mexico, and it's very legitimate. You know, this is OECD guidelines, and there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of streams around the world that, you know, do exactly the same thing, but it's all to do with financing and you know, tax planning and so on. So the governments will do whatever they can to try to collect as much tax as possible from you know, what I guess they perceive us as slaves or something.
Yeah, definitely. So, what are your thoughts on the Independent Precious Metal Authority, LBMA, based in London?
Well, you know, look, it's these groups are controlled by the banks. Um, you know, so there's really no independence as they were, you know, originally set up. You know, COMEX was set up, you know, for you know, apparently for the reason to assist miners to be able to hedge their production over time, and also for the consumers, you know, the big electronic manufacturers. Well, this is back in the 70s, so there wasn't many computers back then, but it's evolved. You know, it was supposed to be to help industry buying over time, and of course the miners to sell over time, and come up with some kind of hedging strategy. But today, you know, the metals, you know, trade, you know, at least, you know, 100 or, you know, up to 300 times their worldwide production. So the leverage in the paper market system is just so, you know, farcical. It's just become a joke, and you know, the LBMA and the COMEX, you know, are the main players, but the, you know, groups behind the scenes are the banks and the governments.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. So, why does the LBMA get to set the price of gold and silver each day?
Well, you're talking about the fix. Well, they shouldn't be able to, and you know, it's an old archaic system that dates back, you know, a few hundred years, and you know, it's the whole purpose of it is to because so if you're a mining company and you have an agreement with a smelter, it's not so much doré related, it's more smelter related. Um, they use the daily fix as a way to pay the miners for the metal, and they use this average fix over, depending on the mining company and depending on the agreement you have with whatever smelter you may have. it'd be a 30-day or 60-day or 90-day average. And then that's, so rather than using the closing price on COMEX, which, I think would make more sense to me, they leave it up to a group of banks in London to do this crazy fix, every morning. And then they use that as a mechanism to price the metals that are flowing around the planet. It's a completely nonsensical way of pricing the metals. It shouldn't be done like that. They call it a fix for a reason, because it is a fixed a fixed system.
Right. So we see that these, corporations, they get to meet, behind closed doors and decide, what price they want to set, whatever price that is. So how can we change the system?
It has changed slightly over the years. It's better than it was. The regulators have noticed, some of these, price gyrations that occur, at the fixed times, or the date, or when the fix is done. We've seen over the last 5 years where, the fix was, on silver, was 50 cents below the last spot price. And I remember one that was about I think it was around $1 off the spot. I forget what year that was, but so definitely there's abuse, and you don't know exactly why, because these guys are obviously have their long positions and their short positions, and they're trying to manage their book, and it's got a lot to do with what's going on behind closed doors at the bank, more than anything. And the miners are basically at the mercy of the banks, and they don't, and quite honestly, it's the communities that are at the mercy of the banks, because at the end of the day, it's the communities that suffer, due to low metal prices, because silver prices, in my view, should be much higher. If this invisible hand, I call it, wasn't there, from these big banking groups, I think silver prices would be likely, multiples of where it's currently trading. And these communities where these mines are located would be much more wealthy communities. Their schools would be better. There'd be, better infrastructure, just better access to services, better access to education, and so on. It would just be great. It would be very good for the planet as a whole if these banks would just let go of the system, but they don't, because they're making so much money doing it. And quite honestly, I don't think they really care about these small communities spread around the planet where, these people are working hard to extract this metal out of the ground, which, we need as the human race to survive, because without silver, this call wouldn't be successful. Electric cars, you couldn't produce an electric car, you couldn't produce a computer, you couldn't produce a cell phone. So, anyways, I could go on forever.
Yeah. So do you think people should be buying physical metal instead of paper metal?
Well, that's the solution. And if you look at my Twitter feed, Keith or Keith _ Neumeyer, feel free to go there and have a look. But I'm always, buy physical silver, because I just saw Sprott Asset Management's tweet this morning, where since January 1st, the PSLV has added 74 million ounces of silver to their ETF, which is fantastic news. I'm so happy to hear that, because these guys actually buy the physical and put it away in vaults. It's taken off the market. It's not like SLV, who just goes into the paper market and just buys paper. It has zero effect on the price of the metal. But people should sell their SLV if they own it, and buy PSLV, or as an alternative, if you don't want to buy PSLV, go buy physical silver. It's you're going to pay a premium for it, and you're going to have to store it. But it's nice to play with. I've got lots of silver myself, and I love looking at it. But it's not the easiest thing to deal with, because when you're buying it, you got to pay a premium, which is annoying. And then when you're selling it, you have to actually take it somewhere to sell it. On a PSLV situation, you can just buy it like a stock, so it's pretty convenient.
Now, one thing I was looking at, for California and a few other states, they actually make it where you don't have to pay taxes if you buy $1,500 or more worth of silver. So do you have to pay taxes on paper silver?
You would on the capital gains.
Okay.
That would be taxable for sure. But no, if you buy paper silver, no, there's no taxes on the purchase.
But you do have to pay capital gains, and on regular, if you just buy regular silver yourself, you don't have to pay that.
I don't know what the tax situation in the United States is exactly, but normally speaking, most countries, if it's a currency, in other words, if the government has produced it, and there's like for example the Canadian 1 ounce maple leaf, I think has a face value of $5 on it. Despite the fact it's an ounce of silver and it, silver is trading at $25, because the Canadian government has had this $5 face value on an ounce of silver for probably 20 or 30 years. And so that is a deemed currency. If you walked into, Costco tomorrow, they would have to take your silver dollar, but they'll only give you $5 for it because that's the face value. So they're not going to give you a spot. They'll give you the face value. So it's technically a currency. So there would be, if you bought or sold that, as far as I know, there's no taxes on it because it's a currency. But if you were to buy just a block of 100-ounce bar of silver, and you bought it, let's say at $10 and you sold it at $30, I'm pretty sure that difference is a capital gain. But your listeners would have to, do that research on their own.
Yeah, definitely. There's actually a movement in the United States. I'm not sure if it's happening in Canada, but various states across the United States are actually trying to make gold and silver legal tender again. So there's been various state senators passing that. So what do you think of that movement?
Look, in the U.S. Constitution, it's pretty obvious that silver and gold are legal tenders, right? That's so I think they've got a lot of reasons to push that. In Canada, where I am, it's a little bit different, but nevertheless, gold has always been a currency. I look at gold as a currency. Gold is the granddaddy of all currencies, and for governments, they'll deny it, of course, because they don't want to have competition. I'm surprised they haven't shut Bitcoin down yet, but I'm sure that's probably coming eventually. But nevertheless, silver I don't look at as a currency. I look at silver as a strategic metal, which is, and I came up with that slogan or that saying almost a decade ago now. And the reason why I look at silver as a strategic metal is because everything that we're doing as a human race requires silver. Governments need gold to support their economies, but the economy itself needs silver to support the economy.
Yeah, so I want to make a statement, and I want to see if you agree with this statement. So I was watching a Robert Kiyosaki video, and he was making the case. He was showing, Americans and everybody from the world that the U.S. government is actually starting to tax Bitcoin. So there's that capital gains tax on Bitcoin, and he was saying that they're starting to tax it. They're starting to get it under their control. But at the same time, though, when you own physical gold and silver, you can buy it and they don't know you bought it if you buy it with physical dollars. So they're not able to do a capital gains tax. So what do you think of these United States government starting to tax Bitcoin? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, they're treating it like a stock, right? So no, I think it's very legitimate. I don't look at Bitcoin as a commodity or as gold. There's a whole debate around that, as you know. So I'm not sure if we want to go down that path, but the fact of the matter is the government, and even I think other governments around the world, I think they're all doing the same thing. I think it's tough for governments to know if you bought Bitcoin. So there's probably a lot of people that hide their capital gains. At least I'm assuming that's the case. But I've never bought Bitcoin, but I would can only imagine that is occurring. So the governments, of course, want their taxable share of that, I gather.
Right.
So
So gold is better from a tax standpoint, owning the physical gold and silver, basically, I think. So
Well, yeah, I suppose it depends on what you're trying to do, but the governments track this stuff too, right? If I was to walk into a bullion store here in Vancouver, or if you were to walk into one in your hometown, I'm not sure where you live, but there's a limit. I forget what it is, but it's a couple $1,000 or whatever it is, and you got to show your passport, you got to show your ID, it's
yeah,
recorded.
you're,
Yeah.
yeah, you're definitely right. If you want to move gold out of the country, that's true. So who is Satoshi Nakamoto?
I think it's probably the U.S. government, probably the U.S. military.
Yeah, I definitely think you're right because he's supposed to be anonymous and we don't know who he is. And usually
Yeah,
anonymous
right.
is government, I think. Uh, so
Yeah, no, my view of Bitcoin is probably a little bit controversial, but I think it was created by the government. I think it was created by the U.S. government, and I think it was a precursor to creating cryptocurrencies for the governments around the world. So it's a bit of a test, for getting all the wrinkles and all the bugs out of the system, and eventually every government in the world will have their own cryptocurrency. And unfortunately, we're probably going to lose cash, which would be a shame. But they're trying to take cash out of the system, and having a cryptocurrency is going to allow them to do that.
So is cryptocurrency for the social credit system so governments can effectively track and trace every purchase you make?
I think so. Yeah, I think that's where they're going.
Okay, so that's probably why they don't want you to own physical gold and silver because they can't necessarily track and trace, purchases with physical gold and silver, correct?
Yeah, they don't exactly promote it, and if you look at, I read an article some time ago, when the COMEX was created, I think it was in 1974. After the U.S. came off the gold standard, there was a letter written to by, I think, the Fed governor at the time. Some of the reasons why they approved the COMEX to trade gold and silver. And one of the reasons that was in that letter was to discourage the ownership of gold, because they felt that they could suppress the price to scare buyers away. And it was written in this letter. It wasn't in those exact terms, but that letter is available for people who wish to find it.
Yeah, definitely. And in my mind, I want to see if you agree. It's kind of the Trojan horse theory, kind of how the Greeks, they were able to bring the horse into Troy and then, as a present, and then they just took over and sacked the city. So do you think, the reason why these banks and stuff are trying to say, oh, Bitcoin's bad, but they're at the same time, they're having the media push it 24/7. Do you think there's a reason for that? Do you think that's a Trojan horse?
We none of us know exactly what's going on behind the scenes with G7 or G20, but obviously this whole reset, this with the politicians coming out now talking about this so-called reset and what it means, and using this opportunity now to come up with this great reset. We keep hearing it. There's some stuff that gets published, some stuff out of Davos, which was published. There was some stuff that come out of the World Bank, and some stuff that's coming out of the EU, where people are kind of hinting what the direction of what's going to occur out there. A lot of it's speculation, and I'm hoping people will stand up for themselves and not let these politicians take away too much of our rights, because it's what it's all about, right? You lose paper currency, and that's a huge right that we lose, because we should, as a human race, as a human being, have privacy, right? And we should be able to spend our $100 that are in our pocket, any way we wish to spend it, and it's no one's business, how we spend our money, at least in my view. Obviously, there's governments around the world that don't agree with me, and then they're pushing their agenda to take away that basic freedom of ours, and it is just is this continuous bleed, that's been going on for the last 30 years, and every decade that goes by, the human race loses more power, and the governments gain more power.
Yeah, you're definitely right. And one thing I was thinking, that crossed my mind is, with physical cash, you don't necessarily have to pay taxes. Like, say you go to your friend and you want to buy something from them, you don't necessarily have to pay taxes. So with Bitcoin, it just seems like a good way to make sure everybody pays their taxes on everything. Would you agree with that?
Oh yeah, it's yeah, for sure. I think, whether it's taxes or I'm sure taxes play a role in it, but it's also to do with this whole idea regarding getting electronic payments in the mail, or just automatically showing up in your bank account. If you are deemed a bad guy for whatever reason, you might have said something wrong, you might have done a tweet that someone in government doesn't appreciate. You may you may have made someone upset, and someone in high power says, "Hey, cut that guy off and don't send him any money anymore." So all of a sudden, you get removed from the system, right? And we're seeing that on Twitter and Facebook, where they're actually removing people, from their platforms just because they don't agree with their particular views. And that's the beginning of a very slippery slope. If we go completely electronic and then lose paper money, then all of a sudden, all the power is in the hands of the government, and we got nothing. We were at the mercy of the government at that point.
Yeah, I definitely think you're right. It's basically making a technocracy. So, what is your view on vaccine passports?
Well, I don't think anyone should be forced to do anything. I'm a libertarian, and I don't mind admitting it. I just don't. I believe in small governments. I believe in complete freedom. Of course, there's rules. People can't harm other people, and so on. But from a general perspective, we should have complete freedom to move around as we wish, to do what we wish, to think what we wish, to say what we wish, to spend our money the way we wish. And unfortunately, that's not the direction that things are headed.
Yeah, so going back to the LBMA a little bit. So I was looking on their membership list, and they have some of the biggest banks in the world, the Bank of China, JP Morgan, and they also have some silver refineries and transportation companies, such as JP Morgan AG, as an example. So is the LBMA a union for the biggest 77 corporations in the world?
All these regulatory bodies, originally they were set up to help the people, like the SEC. Why was the SEC set up? It was set up because of the fraud in the stock market that was happening at the time, and the average person on the street was losing money, so a set of regulations were set up, and the same thing happened in Canada. The whole regulatory system in Canada changed in the early '90s to prevent fraud. But what's happened since then? It's concentrated all this power in the hands of the banks. So the banks just learn to use the system to their advantage. So for what the reasons for putting it together in the first place have actually completely failed, because now all the wealth is being created in a very small group of people, like the members of the LBMA, like the members of the New York Stock Exchange and other exchanges around the world. How does a bank not have a full year or no? How does a bank have no losses, no trading losses in a full year? That's unheard of. I was on the floor of the stock exchange for 5 years, and back in the '80s, and you lose money every once in a while. It's going to happen. It's just you're not going to have 100% track record. But yet, Bank of America and JP Morgan, you look at their promotion, and they're very happy to tell you multiple periods of time. It's been a while since I've looked at the data, but I think in the case of Bank of America and JP Morgan, it was something in the order of 2 years without a single loss, a daily loss, that is. So, wow. Obviously, they've got an upper hand. And who's given them that upper hand? It's the regulators that allow them to have that upper hand, right? So that money is coming out of the public. The money's got to come somewhere. So the small investors losing and the big investors are winning.
I definitely think you're right. So for my last question, what do you think of the LBMA's mission statement, quote, "We advance standards for the common good of the global industry," end quote.
Repeat yourself, sorry.
So what do you think of the LBMA's mission statement, quote, "We advance standards for the common good of the global industry," end quote.
Well, you know, it's interesting. It says global industry. It doesn't say anything about global investors. It should probably say the integrity of the commodities market, but it doesn't have the word integrity in there either. So that statement doesn't really give me a lot of comfort.
Yeah, definitely. Can you tell the viewers where they can find you?
Sure. Well, look, I'm the chairman of a company called First Mining Gold. It's a website, firstmininggold.com. It's a gold development company with assets mostly in Ontario and some in Quebec. Then I'm also the founder. I'm the founder of that company. I'm also the founder of First Majestic Silver. I've been running this business for coming on to 19 years. It's my full-time job. And firstmajestic.com is the website. I would suggest that people go to, if they're interested in silver or gold, go to those websites and look at the PowerPoint presentations. There's lots of good information there. If you care to call the company and talk to the investor relations people, I suggest you do that. If you have any questions, I'm on Twitter. I don't do a huge amount of tweeting, but I told you already that Keith _Neumeyer. Feel free to follow me there.
Well, thank you for being on the show, Keith, and I hope we can have you on again.
Well, thanks, Dallas, for your time. It was a good discussion.
Okay, thanks for watching, everyone.